afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's session on the future of financial centers. My name is Jochen BIEDERMANN. I'm the Managing Director of the World Alliance of International Financial Centers. It's still a little bit loud in the room, but I hope we can go into our discussion soon. Thank you very much. Please allow me to start by briefly introducing the World Alliance of International Financial Centers for those of you who do not know us yet, hopefully not too many. The World Alliance is a non-profit association registered in Belgium, comprising currently 26 leading international financial centers across 4 continents, including EUROPLACE, FinCity.Tokyo, Frankfurt Main Finance, Abu Dhabi Global Market, and also Luxembourg for Finance, last but not least. So they are all represented on our panel. We organize a collaboration between leading financial centers worldwide. We run projects together, we exchange best practices, and maybe most important, jointly promote the vital role of financial centers in financing the economy. We have recently published a white paper on the future of financial centers in partnership with the Dubai International Financial Center and also Yen Group, which some of you might know as the publisher of the Global Financial Center Index, the ranking of the financial centers in a way, unofficial ranking. The white paper you can download on our website free of charge. And with that white paper, we want to underline that we spearhead global thinking on the future role of financial centers in a changing environment, so to say, also challenging environment. Our members, they have increased their efforts to strengthen their jurisdictions, financial markets, business environment. They've built up innovative ecosystems, and also they support sustainable growth globally. In 2030, and this is the focus of our white paper, financial centers will be green, smart, innovative, customer-focused, digital, and inclusive. And they will play a critical role in attracting and retaining the best talent. Maybe the most challenging part of our work, but I'm looking forward to your comments later. Continuous collaboration and knowledge sharing between our members will be key to support that. So we want to discuss some of the findings of our white paper, but without further ado, let me introduce my panelists briefly. Ladies first. Naomi TAKEGOSHI, she is a relationship manager at FinCity.Tokyo. Many thanks for taking a long flight to be able to be with us today. Very much appreciated, Naomi. Then we have Rainer KLUMP. In alphabetic order, he's the newly appointed Executive Director at the House of Finance in Frankfurt. Rainer, congratulations to your appointment and all the best for your new role. Then we have Philippe Richard. He is the Executive Director for International Affairs at the Abu Dhabi Global Market. Philippe, I heard your trip was not too long, but nevertheless, very much appreciate to have you. We have Philipp von RESTORFF, who is the Deputy CEO of Luxembourg for Finance, who had a shorter trip to Paris. And last but not least, also the host of today's conference, Arnaud de BRESSON, the CEO of EUROPLACE. Arnaud, I think you don't need any introduction here in this house. Many thanks to all of you for joining the discussion. Before we dive into the future of financial centers, Arnaud, let me ask you, in your role as a founding member of the World Alliance and the first chair of our association until the end of 2021, looking back a little bit to 2018 when we founded the World Alliance, why did we do so? And in cooperation between, is a cooperation between international financial centers still important? This was one of the ideas at that time.
Thank you very much. First, welcome to all of you. Very happy to have the opportunity to meet you today. It's a particular day because this is the annual conference of Paris EUROPLACE. I have a funny story for you and for Nick, who is here. you have to know that when we have created EUROPLACE 20 years ago, 25 years ago now, we knew that the reputation of the French was first not to speak English, and second, not to work in the summer. So we decided to organize our annual forum in July and in English in July to explain that the French can work from time to time in the summer and in English, by the way. And but it's the reason for which this forum is still a success, but some people are already in holidays, and it's not the reason for which we are a little bit few at the end of the day today. And I'm very sorry for that, for you. Now, the question of the WAIFC is very important. Why did we create this organization? Because we are all convinced that financial center is absolutely key to contribute to the economy and to gather the market players and work together on the development of financial centers on the long term to serve the needs of the economy, of the business, and today of the social needs. And even if we have some fields to compete, we thought it was useful to have an organization, to have a dialogue between financial centers, to exchange around our objectives, our activities, our actions, like we have in Europe dialogues between financial centers. We have a dialogue, a regular dialogue with the City of London to talk about subjects of common interest. We have a dialogue with the FeBAF. Paolo GARONNA has not been able to join, but we have a video from him for today. We have a dialogue with Germany, and so that's very important with Luxembourg, and we also have an EU roundtable to exchange on our actions. Last word to say that I don't know if you have seen that in the introduction of Augustin de Romanet this morning, we have very much underlined why financial center can have a key contribution in the present period to accompany the economic recovery and to accompany the needs for the future in the three key areas, which are the key priorities of Paris EUROPLACE for the coming months and years. First, sustainable finance, and I'm sure we will come back on that. Second, new technologies, digitalization, fintech, and Jochen is very well positioned on this subject. And last but not least, infrastructure financing. These are the key priorities for Paris EUROPLACE in terms of long-term strategy. And we are more than interested to share views on all these subjects, on which, even more than on the classical subjects, we can have subjects to have a common dialogue. The sustainable finance, the climate finance is a collective objective, and we have to share views, we have to advance everybody in the same direction, and this is the reason for which WAIFC can be very useful, and I'm very interested by the report that has been produced on the future of the financial centers.
Arnaud, thank you very much. Naomi, let me come to you. We heard about the Tokyo Vision 2.0. So what are the main ambitions of that initiative, and what role FinCity.Tokyo plays in that initiative?
Yeah. Jochen, thank you very much. I'm Naomi TAKEGOSHI from FinCity.Tokyo. FinCity.Tokyo is the promotional organization to promote Tokyo as a global financial center. We have been around just for about three years now. And Arnaud has mentioned my long journey from Tokyo, but actually, like many other hubs, during COVID, obviously we couldn't do face-to-face events, and so immigration restrictions kind of barred us from going abroad. So I'm pleased to say this is the first overseas visits since pandemic. We chose Paris to do it. So I'm very pleased to be here. So now let me talk about Tokyo's vision. Last year, around autumn, November, the Global Financial Center Tokyo Vision 2.0 was released. And because this vision has been discussed under the pandemic, sustainable recovery is a key theme. And this vision, it's a pretty lengthy document, but just to point the three pillars is firstly, TGFI, it's not TGIF, Tokyo Green Finance Initiative. So Tokyo's plans, commitments to become a competitive green finance center. I can cover this later, more in detail. Second pillar is digitalization of finance. And actually COVID has kind of played a role in bringing digitalization to the financial services sector, which has been traditionally very person-to-face, person-based, paper-based, stamps, hanko we call, which we use instead of signatures. So these things have quite rapidly changed, so digitalization. And thirdly, accumulating global players from around the world to Tokyo. So those are the three pillars, and I would be very pleased to discuss the green finance element in more detail later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rainer, we will skip you for a second. I hope you don't mind, but your turn will be very soon, and come to Philippe. Philippe, in Abu Dhabi, and now we want to talk a little bit about innovation. How you facilitate innovation and beyond, and what are your strategic directions in general at the Abu Dhabi global market? I hope your microphone is working. If not, yeah.
Yes, I think so. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you very much. Well, good afternoon. I'll be brief, but I want to give you a very short update on the context, because Abu Dhabi, what does it mean? I mean, we are an emerging market, which is slightly different from who you are. We are not as a financial center. We are not a banking and financial system. You know, when you use the word financial center, it's always a bit ambiguous, because there are banking systems or there are offshore centers. We are different. We are a financial free zone that was set up in 2015. Why did the authorities do that at the time? It was because they wanted to go ahead and modernize quickly the system and provide the best financial services, and increase in the GDP the share of the financial services. From the very beginning in the UAE, there is a clear view that there would be one day the last barrel exported, and that goes back to the 1970s, when the federation was set up, which is quite amazing, because here we are now. I'm not saying that we don't export anymore. Of course, we are the fourth exporter, but it will come one day. So the key word was diversification from the very beginning, and this is why they set up the financial free zone, to attract international investors and to set up the most modern services providing system. And having said that, of course, we are a bit special, because we are a financial free zone, but in the center you have a regulator. I'm with a regulator. You also have our own court of justice. We are an independent court of justice with a fully independent system. We also have what I would say a business development pillar. So all that is together, and from the beginning we decided to focus on a few sectors. Well, asset and wealth management, because the country is extremely rich, if I may say so. clearly, but they have to manage the assets locally instead of having everything managed in Zurich or London. They wanted to import, and they wanted to also attract international investors. So asset and wealth management. There are other sectors. It's a cluster-based approach with sustainable finance. I may come back to that. Virtual assets. We are extremely active on virtual assets. And from there, well, we always take the most advanced techniques, and which is a way to be, how can I say, agile and nimble in order to be at the forefront in terms of competition. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe allow me a brief advertisement for our white paper again. If you're interested in, different types of financial centers, whether these are free zones, as in case of the Abu Dhabi global market, all of them are physical clusters in a way, but they're different kinds. There's a nice chapter in our white paper describing this, and also we have different kind of financial center organization like EUROPLACE or FinCity.Tokyo or the others. Some are private-public partnerships, some are agencies of the metropolitan government, some are agencies of the federal government, and so on and so forth. Please have a look in our white paper, including some historical aspects of financial center development, which are hopefully quite nice to read. But let me come to you, Philippe, and let's add a perspective from Luxembourg. So from your point of view, what are the main drivers of developing international financial centers, and what allows you in Luxembourg to stay at the forefront of innovation? It's just only the Luxembourg House of Financial Technology, or is it more?
No, it is clearly more, but we underlie the same drivers than most financial centers do. We are driven by regulation since the financial crisis, by mainstreaming sustainable finance, and by digitization. And innovation is key, as much as talents are key in this respect. I will come back to this later. And we have chosen as a vision that we should really focus on these three drivers and try to push innovation as much as possible, and also have synergies and crossovers in terms of sustainability, for example. In order to push the agenda that we all have, we try to combine it more and more with financial technologies in order to liberate the resources we need to achieve this this global objective we all have.
Thank you very much. Basically, I had no doubt it's more than the Luxembourg House of Financial Technology, but thanks for confirming my opinion. Rainer, let me come to you. And let's move to the topic of sustainable finance. We can come back to innovation if necessary, but let's move to sustainable finance. Frankfurt has been selected as the headquarter of the new International Sustainability Standards Board of the IFRS Foundation last year. What is their role, and will this move accelerate sustainable finance developments in Frankfurt and in Germany from your point of view?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jochen. Maybe before I answer your question, let me clarify a little bit my position here. As I'm not representing a financial market organization that would be, in the case of Frankfurt Main Finance, and the person would have been Hubertus Feth, who is a good friend of mine as well. But I'm professor of economics, and I represent the Frankfurt House of Finance, which is an institution that has a strong basis in academic research as part of university, but then under its roof also brings together a couple of institutions, research institutions that are privately funded, that receive public funds, that work very closely with the financial industry, or that have links also with the policy agents, be it in Frankfurt or Berlin or Brussels. So in that sense, and maybe we come to that later when we discuss the challenge of attracting and further developing talent, maybe that's an interesting institution in that sense. So coming back to that sustainability issue, of course, the fact that Frankfurt was chosen as the new headquarter for the ISSB, which will also have some other offices in Montreal and also in Tokyo. Okay, so we'll have a worldwide influence, of course. I think it will and can contribute to strengthening Frankfurt's efforts to position itself as a financial center, with on the one hand side is very strong in collaborating with regulators, with the regulating agencies, central banks and regulators that are located in Frankfurt. But on the other side, of course, also to strengthening this idea of sustainable finance by taking the opportunity that we have this new institution in Frankfurt, close to where our people work and live, and use that as an opportunity to strengthen our ideas in sustainable finance. I can tell you that exactly today, in parallel to your conference here in Paris, we have in Frankfurt, in the Frankfurt House of Finance, the first ISSB Watchers panel. And as it is the first Watchers panel, it is, of course, the plan to develop this into a permanent annually institution similar to the ECB Watchers Conference, which had been very influential in bringing around the ideas that the ECB had with its new policy settings, and setting that also in perspective to the financial industry as well as to the academic world. And so in that sense, we hope that this will contribute to strengthen this triangle that we try to develop, regulators, central banks, financial industry, and also academia and the search for talent.
Please allow me a follow-up question. So where do you see sustainable finance, in your personal opinion, not representing any institution, where you see sustainable finance, let's say in 2030 in Germany?
Well, so certainly as a major issue, in particular in the special, let's say, institutional structure of the German financial industry, as we have this very segmented market. So I think that the main challenge for Germany will be to not only convince the big players, the big industry players, that sustainable finance is something where they have to go. They are already on their way. The challenge is more to also take along the medium and small enterprises, the Mittelstand, and this can happen and will happen via their banks, their house banks, which you find in the cooperative and in the savings bank sector. So I think this is something we are currently discussing on several levels, on how also the Mittelstand and the banks related to Mittelstand can be supported and can be made ready to go also into that transformation.
Thanks a lot. Arnaud, I hope you don't mind me a totally unfair question. It's double unfair. Today, the new Sustainable Finance Institute has been announced and should be ready in autumn. It hasn't been started yet, but of course, I'm curious, maybe the other panelists as well, to learn a little bit more about this. And the second unfair question, where will it be in 2030?
We have started our action in sustainable finance at the beginning of the years 2000, so quite early. And at that time, the subject was socially responsible investment. And we have set up working groups, mostly with the asset management industry. And quite quickly, we went on the subject of the environmental finance, and with the participation of the asset managers and the corporate, and we published reports on that issue and so on. The things have been accelerated at the time of the COP21, and we have launched the International Climate Finance Day of Paris to talk about the carbon questions, the climate subject, and so on. And then after, in 2017, we have set up a specific entity, which is a branch of Paris EUROPLACE, which name is Finance for Tomorrow, which aimed to accelerate our thinking and our proposals in the different subjects of the impact finance, environmental finance, as well as biodiversity and just transition. And we have started to participate to the European working groups on these different issues and so on. The question today is that we see for us 2 or 3 main priorities. First, the question of the carbon neutrality, which is an international objective, seems to us to be the most urgent priority and needs to implement coherent and homogeneous methodologies, instruments with the corporate world to have precise measures and to prepare and to think to the roadmaps which must be implemented. I don't know if you have heard this afternoon Jacques Aschenbrock, the chair of Valeo, who explained how it is difficult for a corporate company, big corporate company, to elaborate a roadmap on the midterm, even more on the long term, to have a concrete development in these issues. So we are thinking that the first works which have been made by Finance for Tomorrow must be accelerated and more precise, with priority to the instruments, to the data, to measure how the corporate world is progressing on this subject. And we will also continue our works on the social finance, on the impact finance, on the biodiversity that we have started with the team of Finance for Tomorrow. So we have decided to consolidate, put a priority on the instruments, on the data, on the research, and give more resources to this initiative that we have developed in Paris EUROPLACE, staying in the Paris EUROPLACE organization, and involving the corporate world on a more senior level than it is the case today. So that's the reason for which we have announced this Sustainable Finance Institute, which will accelerate the work of Finance for Tomorrow and with the team of Finance for Tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I think we can only congratulate you to that step. Any acceleration is important for all of us. We have seen the small incidents this morning, so the pressure will stay. On the other hand, you're perfectly right. As financial center organizations, we should do our best to help to moderate the dialogue, between the governments and the financial institutions, not always speaking the same language, and second, between the financial institutions in particular the asset managers and the corporates. No? So make sure that everything is communicated well, and the financial centers should be, or the organization should be, role models in transparency, right? So this is most important. This is the only way we can convince the general public that we are on the right track. But as suggested, let me move A to Naomi and B to the topic of talent. Naomi, in our white paper, we have stressed that attracting and retaining talent, best talent, is of utmost importance. How you address that issue in Tokyo?
On talent, I suppose that will be also part of Tokyo's green finance, Tokyo Green Finance Initiative, which I wanted to cover. So please allow me to digress from talent, because that is what I very much wanted to convey today. And actually, having listened to EUROPLACE today, there are many themes that chimed with what Tokyo has been pursuing. So going back to Tokyo Green Finance Initiative, well, Tokyo has been a seasoned issuer of green bonds. It has been issuing it for 5 years, since 2017, both in yen and in foreign currency. So as a seasoned issuer for green bonds, Tokyo has, under the Tokyo Green Finance Initiative, is taking an evangelical role, almost, encouraging other local municipalities, local governments in Japan, and private sector companies, both large and small, to be to issue green bonds, sharing best practice, and also rolling out a subsidy scheme for companies. You mentioned the challenge of engaging Mittelstand companies. That actually applies very much to Japan too, which has a very deep, complex layer of SMEs kind of forming the manufacturing industry. So Tokyo is offering the subsidy schemes to make green bond issuance more accessible to smaller players as well. So it's not just the preserve of large companies. You have the third-party certification, various consultancy support that could be costly for companies. So that's one element of Tokyo's Green Finance Initiative. And secondly, I also want to mention transition finance, which came up very strongly at today's discussions. It's very interesting to notice the sheer change in approach, I suppose, not just adapting according to the taxonomy, this is green, but recognizing the transition. And Tokyo, or the Japanese government, puts transition very much at its heart in its decarbonization efforts. For example, our industry ministry, known as METI, they have set up roadmaps for 10, I think it was 10, carbon-intensive sectors like steel and chemical, cement, etc., on their processes which are carbon-intensive and what needs to be changed, what technology can be used to change. That kind of clean tech R&D, of course, involves a lot of investment, and that's where finance can play a role, hence the importance of transition finance. And the Japanese private sector too, like the bank, MUFG, one of our largest banking groups, they're taking initiative in working with their counterparts in the wider Asian region to address this and work out a framework for transition finance. And it is really heartening to hear a lot of these discussions at Paris EUROPLACE regarding transition finance. And for like climate change, a global problem needs solving by sharing knowledge on a global scale. And that's I think very much the importance of your white paper and WAIFC's activities in bringing us all together to come up with finance's approach in addressing these very complex global problems. Yeah, I will stop here.
Yeah, give us a little bit more insight on the challenges for Tokyo in that respect. As an observer, of course, you have many industries in Tokyo region, not only financial industry. Would be interesting what is let's say the reputation or the attractiveness of the financial industry. Then in Tokyo, you also face a trend of people more moving to other cities, countryside. I think Osaka is coming up a little bit, but people also move outside of Tokyo. So is that also impacting the financial center in a way, and how you can find new talent? Also given that I think it's fair to say there are not too many foreigners in Tokyo compared to some other places.
Yes, I suppose with COVID, of course, there has been some population shift in our country too. And in terms of Tokyo's competitiveness, in terms of people, I suppose the good standard of living, that remains an attraction. And maybe we lacked of diversity so far, but actually, we are also seeing quite an influx of non-Japanese engineers coming into to our startup community. I see amongst fintech startups in Tokyo, Moneytree, which is, for example, a personal finance management apps provider. They were set up by a non-Japanese person. So maybe the language barrier might make it look a bit prohibitive, but we are seeing entrepreneurs playing an active. Non-Japanese entrepreneurs coming to play an active role in our ecosystem.
Thanks a lot. Philipp, I would like to move to the topic of regulation. And at the Abu Dhabi global market, of course, you have invested a lot in building up a sound regulatory framework and a best-in-class regulatory body with a financial services regulatory authority. Does it pay off for Abu Dhabi global market or for Abu Dhabi in general?
Yes. Let me first say a quick word on sustainable finance, because we are very much involved in that. And I was talking about diversification away from oil and gas. That's a big goal. You have to be aware that next year we have COP28 in Abu Dhabi. So it's a key, critical topic. So we all work on that, and particularly Abu Dhabi global market. You have to be aware that in Abu Dhabi and the UAE, you have the largest solar plant in the world. You also have the civil nuclear plant, which is Al Barakat, which is producing electricity. So it's very much green or sustainable somehow. And we also have the Masdar city, which is a green city. Quite strange, but it's a fact. But this is not the most difficult. We are very much focusing now on, as you mentioned before, transition financing. And in fact, it's not that much to go, not to be green. Well, green, you know how to do that. But then it's in the amber, how to green the amber to reduce gas emission. And that's the key challenge. And of course, it includes our discussion on taxonomy, what we heard today. And in fact, we are now developing a net zero target, while the country decided to set 2050 as a net zero target. And the key question is, you need a journey, you need a goal, a journey, and metrics, how to measure progress. There is not one path, as Puyane from Total Energy mentioned. It's not one single pass, but you need to have that. And it's done corporate per corporate or sector per sector. And this is a key challenge for us. Having said that, to come back to your question, it's one of the dimensions. We are developing our own regulatory framework, which is mostly fully aligned with best practice, ISSB, and we look at the EU taxonomy and so on. But we want to have a regulation which is progressive, risk-based, and supporting innovation, which is not always easy. But we very much focus on that. Just to give you a quick example, two things. Now we are discussing DeFi. You know, we produce a paper which is public, by the way, based on the IOSCO review, and we produce our own view on DeFi. What's going on? What are the challenges? How to regulate? Because usually people, they don't say anything. They say, well, these are risks and problems, but they never talk about how to regulate. A few years ago, we did that with virtual assets. We decided to go ahead and regulate instead of closing our eyes on that. Same story with a carbon credit exchange. We have authorized ACX, which is the first, I think, worldwide regulated carbon credit exchange in ADGM, and that's a major step forward. So again, regulation, but supporting innovation.
Thank you very much. Rainer, let me come to you. The topic of regulation, and let me also add the topic of risk management, which is closely related to regulation in a way. Which role will that play in the financial center of the future?
Certainly a big role. I'm convinced, and I think also Frankfurt is targeting on that in a specific way. Again, I can say from my perspective, which involves education, research, and then outreach to the financial industry and to the regulators and the central banks. That's an area where we have set up with the Frankfurt Institute for Risk Management, the firm, an institution that is very active in promoting this idea, in establishing a platform also for exchange among key players in that area, and of course linking that again to the sustainability issue is probably then key also to see how the risks that come from sustainability, from environmental issues can be managed is something that's pretty much on the agenda. Let me take the opportunity to also congratulate Arnaud and Paris EUROPLACE for going that step further and inaugurating this new Institute for Sustainability Research. I look very much forward also to have the opportunity then to collaborate with this new institution, as we already do with the Institut Bachelier. Has been very, very fruitful, very inspiring, and I think that was a very good blueprint for seeing how the exchange also between the different financial centers could be further developed.
Arnaud, you want to add something? And then if not, I have another question to you. So what will be the topic we will discuss in 2030 here on this conference?
The meta-sustainable finance. No, possibly our friend from Luxembourg, because
No, I wanted to come back to the talent question, because the white paper showed it clearly that it is a concern to every financial center nowadays. I remember when I hit the labor market beginning of the 2000s, in the top 10 of the most wanted employers, you have found 5 global operating banks. This is obviously not the case anymore. So other sectors are much more attractive to young graduates today. And then these global operations face now also competition from other sectors within the financial ecosystem, namely fintechs. So there's a concern there. And the second observation you can make is that profiles within the financial industry changes dramatically as well. You have today BI developers, full stack developers. You have, of course, evergreens like KYC or risk management profiles, but you have also profiles disappearing. So the industry is faced with a challenge of talent acquisition, but also reskilling and upskilling. So, and this is something tremendously important because we undergo a paradigm shift, and we need that all the employees are getting up to date, because otherwise we cannot mainstream the sustainable finance. And secondly, talent retention is something very important as well. So. The difference between 20 years ago is the expectations from graduates vis-à-vis a company are totally different than it was back then. Today, if you, as a financial institution, not only are ESG compliant and investing sustainably, but you also have to be really a socially responsible organization and to be attractive for these kind of talents. So those organizations and those financial centers who can actually combine and pass these challenges have huge opportunities in the future.
Thank you very much for stressing this. And maybe the financial industry also need to do its best to include those people, those smart minds who now say we are doing greenwashing, or parts of us. So I think it's important to be attractive. Rainer, you wanted to add something, maybe very briefly, then we will play the video of Paolo Garonna.
Okay, no, just want to support what Philipp says. That was exactly behind the creation in 2008 of the Frankfurt House of Finance, to have a link between academic education, higher education, the financial industry, and to see how this upscaling of talents can be done. And as I have spent part of my life also in Luxembourg, I remember that having discussed with the former Minister of Finance, Pierre Gramegna, things that later also led to the introduction to the formation of the Luxembourg House of Financial Innovation. So congratulations also to that big success. And I hope it works well.
Yes. So we will play now the video of Paolo Garonna, the Secretary General of FeBAF, who cannot be with us today. But while the video runs, I will open the floor briefly for your questions. Maybe think of your questions while the video runs, and then you will have the opportunity to raise the question directly after the video. Thank you.
Dear Jochen and dear participants, I'm really happy to contribute to this important session of the EUROPLACE International Forum, and wish to congratulate Arnaud de BRESSON and the organizers for focusing on the European role in global finance in terms of strategic autonomy and pan-European financial integration. These are important topics, particularly now when we are facing unprecedented threats to globalization and multilateralism caused by the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. We had made important progress after the last financial crisis in terms of microprudential and macroprudential regulation, and in general in the global governance of finance, also last year in relation to climate change and net zero transition. But now the war is presenting great challenges in terms of fragmentation of global governance, the formation of rival rose blocks, the weaponization of finance, and the new awareness of the geopolitical aspects affecting financial decisions, individual decisions, collective decisions, not only policies. See, after green finance, we are having now secure finance, and therefore the focus on good governance, human rights, the rule of law. So in this context, I think the role of the network of financial sectors, financial centers, has an important role to play. And I would highlight three aspects of this new and important role. First of all, it's a global network. It's a network, and therefore it underpins a community based on values, based on shared interests. And I think now investors, savers place much more attention of those aspects on values than before. Second, the growing links between insurance, banking, and capital markets based on the fact that we are facing new risk scenarios, but also new opportunities in terms of digital transition, open finance, and the creation of ecosystems. Financial centers are ecosystems of multiple cooperation and competition. And finally, the global nature of the network, but also the regional and interregional nature of the networks. I think Europe is very well placed at the global level and at the regional and interregional level to play an important role. In the past, Europe has been rather inward-looking, and Europe is lagging behind, for instance, on completion of banking union and capital markets union, not to speak of the challenges for energy, migration, the budget, defense and foreign policy. But now, thanks to President Macron and the joint leadership of Macron, Draghi, Scholz and other European leaders, I think there is a new climate. We have seen it with the unblocking of the enlargement process. There is more openness towards Eastern Europe and the Euro-Mediterranean, and the new approach to Euro-African relations. So I think Europe can move faster and can rely on financial sectors and financial centers to play a leading role, taking more responsibility and promoting internal reforms. Of course, there are huge financing gaps, protection gaps, but I think the response that we can build can be forceful, and certainly Italy, the Italian financial community, which I have the privilege of representing, is proud and happy to participate in the alliance and therefore to contribute to the important tasks that await us in the future.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And there was one question. That's
I can speak like this, that's fine. So my name is Philippe, I'm working at the consulting in BRESSON, so it's not I had a question about the concept of open strategic autonomy, because in Brussels we see the concept emerging, nobody agrees on what it means, but it feeds key financial regulation, be it BASEL, be it IFF, be it sustainable finance, etc. And it will feed even more future regulations. And I just wanted to know how this concept of European open strategic autonomy might or might not be integrated in your strategy and your day-to-day interaction with the EU policymakers and the EU regulators. And what extent it will be, I would say, in the future.
Thanks for that question. Any volunteers, Philippe?
Yeah, I can say a few words on that, because this is a very important question. In our case, and I just speak for the UAE and ADGM, while we develop our own regulatory framework, as I said before, but we keep exchanging with Brussels in order to seek equivalence on different topics. Not easy, clearly. On asset management, while we have the AFMD and the update of AFMD and so on. So there are one day the passporting with third countries, but we keep an eye on that. On sustainable finance, not is even more difficult because we don't apply the EU taxonomy as such, but we're trying to find a way to keep the channel with the EU, because we know that the EU is intrinsic, you know, as such. It's more inward due to Brexit and other things, but it's a major standard setter globally, and the influence is major on the market. So we want to keep the channel open, trying to not to copy paste, but to be recognized and find equivalent. This is what I can say on this. I don't know if I answer the question.
It's a very important question indeed. We have a single market. We have achieved a lot for the time being. Now, especially as Luxembourg Financial Center, who is a cross-border financial center, we need to push the Capital Markets Union in order to really achieve this kind of autonomy we are actually looking for. And regulation has much shaped this the Capital Market Union for the time being, but there's a lot that remains to be done.
Thank you very much. Let's wrap up this exciting discussion. Arnaud already had to leave to open the next session downstairs. Please join me giving a big round of applause to my fellow panelists, Naomi, Rainer, Philippe, Arnaud, who left already, and of course Paolo, who provided the video. Thank you very much to all of you.